Now, I want to talk about a trope we've hinted at in these words recently, but never gone into the core concept. It really first hit me while playing, of all things, the Ubisoft game Watch Dogs. It's the trope of my dead family, specifically delivered in that gravelly voice. My dead family! In my eyes, My Dead Family is a narrative shorthand used to explain why a hero, or more frequently an anti-hero, is not only motivated but somehow justified in taking out his internalized rage upon the wrongdoers we are presented with, even if they didn't kill his family directly. If his family was killed, then it's entirely understandable that he performs atrocities. Mad Max, Green Lantern, Kaiser Soze, Maximus Decimus Meridius, Wolverine, Punisher, multiple Game of Thrones characters, and of course, Batman. Don't get me wrong, done right with a careful hand and fresh perspective, this can be executed extremely well. Case in point, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. Now, Steve's father died in the First World War when Steve was extremely young. His mother died serving on a TB ward, and he carried their selfless example with him his whole life, trying to live up to their nobility. So he wasn't trying to avenge them, he was trying to emulate them. Conversely, Tony carried his paternal conflict with him his whole life. At the end of this film, he's reduced to a teenage boy as the true horror of their murder hits him like a freight train. Had this been his primary motivation throughout the film, any sense of altruism in his decisions would have been questionable. It would have been far too personal. Instead, this 11th hour reveal suddenly reverses our sympathies as we see the fragile boy doubly heartbroken by Steve, his teammate and chief rival, knowing already. This creates a powerful final fight that, like the recent Planet of the Apes films, far from welcoming, we find we have in fact been dreading, the polar opposite of the horrendously mismanaged tone of the Batman v Superman grimy punch-up in a toilet. The Russos and Marvel knew that at that exact point, we, the viewer, are pleading with the heroes to stop before somebody dies and leaves the survivor a hero murderer. This film, when viewed from above, is a triple whammy of a cerebral critique on the superhero movie, an almighty royal rumble of colourful characters, both established and new, and a tragedy of epic proportions, somehow leaving you still smiling with hope for the future. On second viewing, its strengths are even clearer. This is, to me, the best superhero movie yet made, closely followed by several others in this series. It is going to take something pretty special to top the level of total investment that it instilled in me.
The thing that I find frustrating about not the trope itself, but how it's explored, or more specifically how it's not explored, is that it is frequently, as you say, set up as justification for why the hero does the amazing, cool, badass things. It is very, very rare that there is an actual exploration of actual grief involved in this particular setup. It's usually a case of reinforcing the idea that if you're a man, and I mean man with a capital M, big tough guy, big guns, etc. The only emotion you're allowed to express is anger. There's no finesse, there's no subtlety. Everything that they're feeling gets channeled into rage and revenge. And by the end, you've got two choices. Either they've killed everybody in their path and it hasn't helped, they're still furious, or they've killed everybody in their path, boffed a heroin, and all of a sudden everything's fine again. And there just isn't. It's a massive thing to lose a person is huge. To lose your whole family, which is often the way these things are set up, wife and child, mother and father, etc., is so massive that the human capacity is stretched almost to its limit to deal with something like that. And how often do we see an actual look at that, particularly in video games where this trope crops up over and over and over again as lazy storytelling for somebody who can't come up with a better plot.
And also it's just, we're expected to just accept what the protagonist or whoever the character is in the story, just accept that, that's okay. Because their family has died, now it is acceptable for everyone who dies to die. Whereas Civil War, which I'm sure we'll get onto, makes a point of being like, this person's family died and they're trying to seek revenge and what have you. That doesn't make it okay. Like, it makes a point of saying that, not like outright, but the theme of the movie is very much like revenge is poisonous. This is toxic. It's not a good thing that these characters are kind of surrendering to this urge to seek out vengeance.
There's multiple characters as well, if you think about it, in their comic backgrounds. Peter Parker's parents dead. My dead family, not so much from that kid. Scarlet Witch, parents died. That was her motivation in Age of Ultron, and she found a new calling. And then there's Black Panther, motivated in this film entirely by vengeance for his father's murder, and very overtly juxtaposed against Zemo at the end. And we obviously couldn't discuss this on the 2016 show when we recorded it, but T'Challa would go on to encounter his cousin, Eric Killmonger, himself consumed by vengeance over the murder of his own father. And what Black Panther learns in this film informs his decisions in his own 2018 movie. This discussion you just heard goes on in our Civil War podcast. I recommend you check out the whole thing on the School of Movies archive feed.